All right. Hi, everybody. Once again, I am Brett Norton with Beyond Clean. Thanks again for joining us. We've had two great sessions already, gearing up for another one in this third session. So should be a good one. I really want to thank our event sponsor 3M for making this event possible, and also our event collaborator First Case for providing the nursing credits. Couldn't do it without you guys, so thank you very much. I want to again point out what is available in the resource window, which is up on the right-hand side of your screen. There is bonus CE content that is available outside of the conference today, so you can access those sessions and watch them individually and get your individual CEs from those sessions. They're not affiliated with the conference, but we're offering them as an extra bonus to grab 4 extra CEs on top of the 6 that we're offering today. There is a how to access CE certificate guide as well. So it's a really good resource for obtaining your CE certificates. We get a lot of questions regarding that. So please feel free to click that link, download that document, and take a look at the point-by-point instructions on how to access your CE. There is also sponsor-provided brochures and product information from 3M, so make sure to check those out. And also a little bit of housekeeping, just in regards to anything technology related. If you have a frozen screen, if sound is not really particularly working, please make sure to go ahead and refresh your browser 99.9% of the time. That fixes the issue. So if you have any other issues, you can always throw a question in the chat screen or the question screen Q&A, and I will go ahead and help you out through that route. Want to introduce our next presenter / speaker. His name is Robert Silverstein. Robert is the Senior Director of Central Processing and High-Level Disinfection Sterilization, HLDS/S for an acronym there, at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, or CHOP. Robert joined CHOP in 2017 with a focus on developing and advancing the organization's HLDS strategy. Robert is a core leader in the design and implementation of large-scale off-site logistics center focused on consolidating multiple support services to support the CHOP system more effectively and efficiently. He has a passion for work focused on inclusiveness and equity. The presentation title for today, the panel discussion, is Accountable for Change, Collaborating Between Supply Chain and SPD. In many healthcare facilities, sterile processing departments fall under the reporting structure of perioperative services. The same cannot be said at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. The central processing department at this facility broke the mold when it joined forces with supply chain and created a new reporting structure within their surgical services. In this session, we'll learn from Robert about the benefits his department has experienced since making this change, from the optimization of preference cards and supply chain management to the significant improvement to OR on-time starts. This reporting structure is certainly proven to be effective. Gather around with your favorite inventory specialists and tune in for this collaborative discussion. Join me in welcoming Robert and once again, Hank Balch.
All right, thank you, Brett. And yeah, Robert, welcome to the Conference of Champions. Are you ready for this?
I think so. I hope so. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, well, yeah, ready or not, here we come. So before we get in too deep, Brett gave a little bit of your bio, but I'd like you to kind of, maybe fill in the gaps a little bit, tell folks what makes you tick. Maybe let's ask it that way. And then how did you end up at CHOP?
It's a great question, long journey, and I'll try to give you a succinct answer. So, at CHOP, we actually use a slogan called "What is my why?" Why do we do what we do? And that's my why is why I got into healthcare, why I got into this field. And probably like many people, I had a very personal experience. Won't go into too many details. I don't want to hear or see any tears in this, but Unfortunately, my mother experienced very negative outcome from a routine back surgery, even though we know there's no such thing as a routine back surgery. During that time, it opened my eyes to many things that were not really transparent in healthcare, really inefficiencies in healthcare and lack of standardization. And I learned about health administration. I wasn't the guy that wanted to see or feel blood. I wasn't a person that was going to give needles. That just isn't in my forte. However, my eyes opened to the other side of the world, which is health administration and getting into the non-clinical side, but how do you interact with clinicians? I ended up getting my master's in health administration from the Medical University of South Carolina. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, so I'll quickly figure out how I got to Philly from Charleston and why I did that. Even though, the recent weather, it felt like the right move right now. So after graduate school, I actually did a fellowship at Rush University Medical Center out in Chicago. I did that for 1 year, and subsequently, right after that, I transitioned to be a supply chain manager in the OR. So that's really where I cut my teeth with managing people. I also oversaw guest relations services along with that. And then I was part of a team that was moving support services into a brand new hospital. So I really was involved in a lot of different things. Got to partner a lot with Central Sterile, even though Central Sterile wasn't under my purview. Transgressing into the career, I ended up moving on and became the director of supply chain logistics for Rush. We also had a community hospital and outpatient facilities. And so really my background is hospital operations, supply chain management. Now how I got to Philadelphia. So my wife was actually originally born and raised in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. For those unfamiliar, it's about 20 minutes from Philly. And most people will tell you they're from Philly. I will not. I will tell you I'm from New Jersey because that's what the license says. But when we have two children, I have a 6-year-old boy and a 9-year-old daughter who are just my gems of life. My wife is part of a large family, and they all live in the same neighborhood in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So when we had our second child, we had a decision to make. I would either stay in Chicago by myself, or I could move with my family to New Jersey. That was a commitment that I had made early in my career. My wife gave me about 8.5 great years in Chicago. I love Chicago. I loved Rush, but it was just time to move closer to family. When I was looking for positions, understandably, I was looking more for supply chain roles. That was my background. That's where I felt I could make an easy transition. When I was interviewing at CHOP and meeting people at CHOP, they brought up the idea, hey, we have this newly created director of sterile processing. We know that that's not your background, but these are the challenges that we are facing in sterile processing. And with what you've done in supply chain, we actually think you could be a good fit. And that's going to be one piece of advice as we go through this I'm going to give. And so I ended up accepting the role to be actually the first clear director of sterile processing at CHOP. I did that for a year. And then after my first year, they changed it and they put high-level disinfection sterilization for the entire network under my purview. And so with that, and I think Brett shared some, we started our journey of, hey, this is how we're going to tackle sterilization, this is how we're going to tackle HLDS, and this is how I kind of got there. And now I've been at CHOP about 5.5 years, love every day of it, love what I do, love my team. So I'm very happy I made that choice to kind of transfer to this side, and it's given me a different appreciation for sterile processing. And I can tell you that just from learning about your podcast and working with people in the industry, it's fascinating.
I mean, what a unique journey and background. I think everybody has a unique way they ended up in sterile processing, but particularly coming through supply chain into sterile processing. I think that's relatively rare. Like you see a lot of folks that end up in sterile processing different ways and they go the supply chain route, but you don't really see it happen the other way. So really looking forward to kind of digging into that for the rest of the session. But you also mentioned something. I just kind of want to start with the guest services. That was kind of like an offhand comment that you had experience with guest services, kind of running those teams. And if you listen to our podcast at all, we are all about customer service and the importance of customer service training and interfacing. Even though we're very clinical, and in some ways we're very, isolated from the patient interaction, we still have customers, and all of those skill sets are very important. So I'm kind of curious, how has that experience in that team with guest services impacted how you approach and train and build that culture of guest service in your sterile processing team?
No, it's a fantastic question. And I can tell you, I have taken what I've learned in that year. So it was interesting. The role I was at Rush was a newly created role, and the guest services manager had just left, and they were looking for just something different. Again, I think, we get hung up at times, especially in healthcare, finding the person that has the exact background you want with the exact experience you want for that role. And Rush was another place that said, no, we need this, and this doesn't have to fit in this square box. And so I will tell you, when I had that, and I was early in my career, I was a very young leader. I learned from the guest relation associates, because these individuals all sit at the front points of our hospital, right? They're working with happy and angry patients, happy and angry families, staff, lost citizens, whatever it is. The methods that they have to use to communicate and how they communicate, to be succinct but deliver your message, those are everything that you teach and you learn with that group. And you can easily put that in any operation. So at CHOP, the way we interact with our biggest customer, which is the OR, with all customers, is very standard. We like to be consistent in our messaging. We don't like to we have 3 or 4 different supervisors. They all say the same message. I don't want one supervisor saying one thing to the OR, but another one would say something different. And then how you say it. I think, a lot of times we get calls, especially in sterile processing, where it can feel very finger pointing, right? It's the blame game. Like, this set was wet. And how you react to that goes a long way in how you foster relationships. And it's very easy to say, well, the set was wet because you told us you wanted it in the OR quicker and we didn't have time to cool it. But that's not the right message. And so as you learn these little nuances, you start teaching them to your frontline techs, how we answer the phones. We do twice a day, our teams do huddles with the OR. We have a position called core coordinators, which are liaisons in the OR that are kind of the hybrid between our frontline technician and our supervisors. They play that middle person with the OR. They are fantastic communicators. It's all by design, right? So me having that knowledge, and I won't say I was perfect at it, but I saw the value in how you can talk to someone no matter where they are in the organization, no matter what level. And that was the expectation I had for my team.
I love that tie-in to the communication part of that, right? Because I think, like I brought up, the customer service side of it, but to provide good customer service, you have to be able to communicate in 2 ways, like receiving that information that you're hearing from your customers in the OR, from the patients, et cetera. And then, as you said, communicating back in a professional manner with that kind of proactive look on, okay, this is what they're telling me is wrong. This is what they're telling me that they're upset about, but is there anything else behind or in front of that commentary that I can take and say, yeah, but let me go one step further and really fix it for you in a way that you're going to be happier than you were even before the issue happened, right? We'll probably come back to that on the topic about processes that I've got here a little bit later, but I want to jump in before that to just the background to the award itself. I'm asking everybody in these sessions today this question. Like, your team won the award in 2019, which means the year that they took a look at in the submission process was actually 2018. So you had like a good 12 months in 2018 to really build the case. What did everything look like in 2017 before the big momentum and that snowball started, where everything started to come together? Can you kind of give us a snapshot of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw something in the Q&A. Someone asked if I can make my audio better. Unfortunately, it's all the way up. So I'm going to try to talk a little louder. I'm actually in our new service and logistic building where we're moving our sterile processing. So it might be a little bit noisy in here. I apologize. So when I joined CHOP, the year prior to me joining, CHOP had transitioned under an interim leader under supply chain. When I joined in 2017, you have to be careful how you describe when you come in as a new leader and you see things aren't going well. Remember, I'm not the sterile processing guy, or I wasn't back then, but I was a process guy, I was an efficiency guy, and I was a standardization guy. And so when I got there, I, like any normal leader, I just took an assessment. I got to know my people. And quickly what I realized is I had pretty awesome people. And we had pretty rough processes. And it was all over. So the way CHOP is set up, at least our Philadelphia campus, we're a large system, but I'm going to focus on our main hospital. We have an outpatient center that's across the street. We have multiple clinics spread out throughout different buildings, and many of them are doing their own sterilization. Many of them are also sending stuff to our main CPD. And when you looked at how things were coming in, We have case carts coming down slow from the OR, let's say around 9 or 10 o'clock is when it starts hitting. Well, all of a sudden we started getting this influx of instruments also from the clinics. And it became very challenging for our team to prioritize, right? The OR is kind of your main customer. We have surgeries, you have turnovers, but it doesn't mean the outpatient clinics are any less of that. So we really had to break down the work. And what we did is we broke down everything. What I saw in the department, to answer your question, was just, it was organized chaos in some essence, but some of it was just chaos. And it was really trying to understand, what are we trying to do? What systems do we have in allowing us to make decisions? One of the things I'll tell you about CHOP, and I didn't have this where I came from, and I'm sure a lot of people don't, but our analytics, our data is phenomenal. I have access, we use Click software. I have access to Click views that show me everything. I have it tied into SPM behind the scenes. So without going to my department for a full day, I can get a pretty good feel of what's going on. Well, when I looked at these Click views, I could really tell. We have sets sitting on the shelves for more than 24 hours. We have items sitting in cooling for X amount of time when we know they are in the OR. So there was missed scans. There were inefficiencies in how we were divvying out the work. So I think when you took all that in and you just break it down and you have to bite off, little chunks at a time, it wasn't rocket science. It was someone taking the time to really sit with people, learn the operation, and come up with ideas. The last part I'll tell you is your staff. And I know this is going to sound cliche, but you have to talk to your employees. Your employees on the front lines know way more than you do in your office or when you go rounding or anything like that. So an employee comes to you and says, Robert, we really need this. Like I take that and I run with it, because at the end of the day, I have a very, very open door policy. One of the things I didn't mention in the previous question you asked me about guest relations was I also have to give them a place to vent, right? In guest relations, you're going to be nice to everyone, but you have to give them a space to kind of just yell and get it off their chest. It's no different in CPD or anywhere else. And I think what we did is we created a culture to allow employees to feel open to come talk to us, and they saw that we were listening and reacting. The last thing I'll tell you, and it's in the title of this presentation, is accountability. I'm a very fair leader. At least I believe I'm a very fair leader. And we had some accountability problems. We had a lot of individuals that were pulling their weight. Their productivity numbers were great. They were coming to work on time. We had a lot of people on the other end of that spectrum. And what I can tell you is we had employees who came to me my first week at CHOP, and they said, and they weren't afraid to share names, these are the individuals that are dragging us down. And it was interesting because you could look in the system and you can see they were pretty right. And so, as a leader, you don't run with that and just start making decisions. But over time, we implemented policies. And it was really implementing and enforcing the policies that were already there. And listen, we had some turnover in the department. We're fortunate at CHOP where we have a waiting list almost for people wanting to come into our hospital. It's a privilege to work at CHOP. It's a privilege to work at any organization in the country. We know that, our candidates know that. And as an employee, you can easily forget that if you're not being held accountable. And I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we just, we said you had to be 100% productive and you had to do this and this. There's no leader out there that thinks their employees should work 8 hours of every shift of every time they come in. That's just not realistic. But you have to set expectations that are attainable and achievable, and you have to have two-way dialogue. And that's really what it was. It was a lot of organized chaos. There was a lack of accountability on the employees. We were short-staffed at the time, so they were running a ton of overtime, temps in the department. So I really focused on that first year of getting us back to the basics of what we do and how we manage the department. Subsequently, the next year, which is 2018, is when we went full throttle. Took a year to get us up and running, and then that next year we hit the ground running.
I want to go back to your comment about data, though, because you are absolutely right. That is rare to have the kind of data that you can put confidence in. There's a lot of programs out there that can pull all kinds of reports, but because the data many times in sterile processing is so broken, you can't really trust the report. You're always going in and saying, well, yeah, but we know like 30% of our count sheets are incomplete. And we know 20% of our trade titles are inconsistent or duplicative and everything else. And so like you add all that in and it's like, well, yeah. So this productivity report actually doesn't really tell us what we think it's telling us.
Right.
Just realistically, how many years did it take, and what was that process of getting the data to the point to today, as you said, like with a couple of clicks, you can get a pretty good feeling for what's going on process-wise, what's going on productivity-wise in the department?
No, it's a fantastic question. And you know what's interesting, and we use SPM. I'm familiar with the other instrument management systems. SPM is great, and most of the systems are great at that point in time when you're scanning something and seeing it on the screen is beautiful. Where SPM and some of the other systems are lacking, in my opinion, is really around dashboards and key performance indicators and seeing them in real time and being able to react. The system just has so much in it. So what we were able to do is we actually interfaced SPM with Epic with ClickView. So we're pulling surgical data out. We have a whole clinical analytics tool that we can use. I can forecast what the requests are going to be for surgery for however many days they've already started posting. The one thing I also brought from my supply chain background is I'm pretty knowledgeable in Epic, how things are documented, whether it's supplies, implants, and that is something that the department didn't have. So with SPM, and you mentioned this, there's bad data everywhere. We've done a lot of work of cleaning up SPM. Actually, as part of our transition to this new building, we actually cleaned our entire item master. We've also had to procure almost double of our entire inventory. To do so, you have to have clean count sheets, right? Clean recipes. What we've noticed along the way is a lot of the items that we rarely use, we didn't really have recipes for. So throughout this process, we built them. The key is keeping them clean and having good type policies. So we run audits quarterly on our data. We look at the data. So our data is actually very clean, but we put a lot of effort into it, because if you don't have clean data, the story doesn't tell you much, Hank, like you said. So when I go into ClickView, the nice thing about the Click application for us is I get a full picture. So we categorize our sets by A, B, and C. So our highest movers, which again, the first in, first out philosophy started in supply chain. So I have a button, I click my A sets, I can immediately see what's red. Red meaning we have 0 on the shelf available. And I can immediately then look at my clinical tools and say, oh, well, they're doing 4 cases today and they used all of our, ortho sets. I have nothing for them. That's why it's at 0. What we notice a lot of times with the data is bad scanning, because the scanning is so manual. And what we use the data to try to help us think differently on how to set up our process points and our scan points in SPM. But it starts really clean. So, we use this every day. Our lead technicians actually use it to help prioritize work. The only problem is, and you said it earlier, is SPM in this data, there's a lag time. So it's about a 10-minute delay. So it used to be 50 minutes. I've really pushed IS to get it down to 10. So I need it down to 0, because every once in a while we run into what you said, where we think one thing, but guess what? The technician already did something with that set, so it's not real anymore. Doesn't happen as often, but I think holistically you get the picture.
I want to go to a question here that we got submitted here from Bonnie Cook. And by the way, for those of y'all who are tuning in live to this session, you can put your questions for Robert in the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. Anything that you want to ask him, he's an open book on any of the topics that we're talking about. But Bonnie asked, what are some of the specific messages that you try to relay to the OR when dealing with issues and problems? I think this goes back to that guest services kind of conversation we were talking about before. Any insight on that kind of conflict resolution or issue resolution on this topic?
Yeah, Bonnie, thank you for the question. So I don't know that I have the crystal ball answer to this one, because I think it varies. I think with the OR, the one thing I will tell you is just transparency. If you've made a mistake, we own it. You can't not own it. I mean, at the end of the day, our names are on the barcodes that go on these sets, right? What the messaging that I communicate and work with my team on is really try to not be defensive. If it has to get to that point, I'll jump in. I don't have a problem doing that when it's necessary, when I have all the right things. But the messaging with the OR is we're in this together. They can't do surgeries without us, and we can't process sets without them. It's really a collaboration. I know, again, that's a cliche word. We really try to foster it. In my time at CHOP, we've gone through a lot of different OR nursing leaders and OR leaders in general, and we've been pretty solid. And I think as we have the consistent messaging, you can tell that it's working, because as new leaders come, they feel very comfortable with us. But it's really around what the message is at that point in time. The other thing is the OR tends to be in the moment, patient on the table. We're dealing with children predominantly, so it's kids on the table. The way they're talking to you is different than how you're going to message back to them. And it's hard to remember to do that. I'm not the best at it. I'm not going to tell you. My team is awesome at it. And I love them for that, because they'll take that message, they'll take that feedback, and they just calmly give a message back. And the message could be, yes, we dropped the ball, we're going to re-educate, or I hate to tell you this, but the nurse actually didn't spray the set when it came down, so we're having to do a longer soak time, things like that. So I think it's just how you approach the message, maybe not the messages directly.
A few questions ago, you made some comments about accountability, and obviously that is in the title of the session, Accountable for Change. And you brought up one of the hottest topics in the industry at the technician level and the leadership level, and that's how do we hold our technicians accountable for productivity? And you kind of spoke to that a little bit, but accountability is much larger than just productivity, and it involves the data piece, as you mentioned, but I'm assuming there's more that goes into it even than data. So let's kind of go back to the beginning here and just say, how would you define accountability in the context of sterile processing, and how have you sought to implement it, and what have you learned along the way?
So I would define accountability in sterile processing. Let's see. So I think it's providing the tools, the education, the resources to your staff for them to do your job, and then again holding them accountable to the job. Can't hold them accountable if they don't understand what exactly it is they should be held accountable to. So it was going back to the basics. We've been very, very good about documentation. We are a union environment, so it's very important that our documentation is there, that we get signatures on things. I also think it's important that you don't just run to discipline employees. And I can tell you as a leader, and I review all disciplines, because again, I go back to my fairness and I want to read things. I want to make sure that we're consistent. And there's been many times where I've taken a discipline away. I'm like, I don't think we're there yet. I think as a director, the worst thing I have to do ever, and I don't sit in the tongue, but my leadership team is discipline an employee. None of us want to do that. So for all of you on this call, please hear me. There is no leader in sterile processing that enjoys disciplining employees. I do think, though, it's a method. It's a method to holding accountability. Now, at SHOP, we start with the general counseling at times, and I will tell you, in my experience, the general counseling can sometimes do wonders for an employee. But there's so much work before you even get there. And I don't even like talking about disciplining. So it goes back to, we talk about productivity. Are the labor standards correct in SPM? We had an employee that had really low productivity the other day. And I look at the reports, and if I see something awry, I reach out to my manager. And sure enough, the labor standard for 2 of the trades was not accurate. And as soon as we changed that labor standard, the productivity looked way better, right? So you can't just jump to disciplines. Understand what's going on. Make it very clear what you're holding them accountable to. We rolled out a policy. We now told them we're going to give it over a month to sink into the team. We're going to meet with you weekly to review your productivity. Because at the end of the day, we're a hospital. We're not, a production line where we're trying to do something to get a part in a car. And a part in a car is very important. Don't get me wrong. We all need a steering wheel in our car. But a set for surgery is different. And I don't want people to feel like they're coming in and that's all they're doing. I want them to have care in the handling, in the idea of this set's about to cut into a baby. Are we doing everything the right way? And if you are, it all speaks for itself, and you don't have to, the accountability kind of goes. And I will tell you, Hank, for the most part, 90% of our staff fall into that. It's the small group that you really just have to stay kind of focused on and engaged with.
I go back to a theme I brought up a couple times through the years, and actually got this from one of my former managers, but I came up with the term, the triangle of truth, and it speaks to what you're talking about, the accountability piece, and not jumping directly into discipline, but asking questions. And the triangle of truth is, do they have the tools that they need to do what you're asking them to do? Do they have the training that they need to do what you're asking them to do? And do they have the desire to do what you're asking them to do? And almost inevitably, it's one of those 3 things that are missing from the category. If you start asking questions like, yeah, well, you want me to be productive, but I haven't had the training to be efficient in assembling trays, so I would like some more training. Or, yeah, but we're missing all these instruments, so it takes me forever to assemble this tray, so I don't have the tools to do it. Or if you got the tools and the training, well, let's talk about your desire to be efficient at this point. And it really, it's a simple little structure, but I found it very helpful to get to what you're speaking of, and in those kind of general account situations, but also even prior to that. Speaking of people, because you mentioned one of the hardest things to do as leaders is that kind of discipline category, but one of the best things to do as leaders is to develop people and to see them grow. And I know a big part of this award journey for your team is just the power of people on mission to do big things. Can you give us some highlights on how the people part of this journey really played out in this award-winning season?
No, and you can't do this without people. So I'm a leader of a great team. A lot of times the leader's name gets put on things, but at the end of the day, it's not the leader who's really the one responsible for it. And I'm the first one to tell you that. So, from a people standpoint, when I came to CHOP, originally, like I said, I was just the director of sterile processing. I could immediately tell that this was bigger, badder than CHOP realized. And so one of the things that we did is we had a nurse who was actually part of our HLDS committee, who started becoming very knowledgeable about sterile processing, about high-level disinfection, became very passionate. And when they rolled the program under me, I really said, and I said, I'm taking this on one stipulation. Her name is Jill. I said, Jill is a part of my team. And so I made Jill the program manager for HLDS, and then I had another manager over CPD. The structure is very important because CPD can't take on everything with the current setup of a traditional sterile processing department. It's impossible, and it's set up for failure. And that's one of the things I noticed right away. I had my CPD manager who was getting, I don't even know how many emails a day, couldn't even manage the calendar because everything he was pulled into. And I quickly realized it's because they're blending HLD items with CPD items, and really we need to distinct the two. So we set up a really nice structure. We have individuals in our network that we train. They don't report up through me, but we're almost like a consultant for the enterprise. So all of our people get the same exact training from my HLDS team. It never was like that. It used to be they had their own way of training, this had their own way of training, and now all the training is managed by me. All of the competencies are managed by our team. So when you ask the people aspect and on that journey, the first part is education. Are you educating your people the right way? Are you giving them the resources to do the job the right way? And is it consistent across the enterprise? Then do you have the right people? And we've done a lot of work to get the right people. And I can tell you, I'm very proud because since my time at CHOP, and we're about to promote another one, is we've moved technicians into supervisor roles. There's nothing better as a leader than to see the transgression or the transition of your staff as you're growing them. It means that we're developing people the right way. The other thing is like I said earlier, we have a lot of individuals that want to come to CHOP, and they get that through what their colleagues are telling them, what the technicians that are coming from other hospitals, the environment we've created. CHOP, we're very fortunate to have resources that allow us to invest in buildings, to invest in new sterile processings, and invest in people. And so throughout this time, I was also able to show how much work was being put on our people, and I actually got approval for a decent amount more of staffing. And what was really interesting to me is for a while, our outpatient clinics, as I mentioned earlier, were all being routed to our main CPD. It was causing ridiculous bottlenecks. I had staff transporting stuff across campus with these big, heavy case carts, as many of you know. Employee engagement, that doesn't help with that. And when I joined, and I'll remember this, he'll probably remember this too, I introduced myself to the COO, and I said, I've heard that it's been impossible to get a CPD hub in our outpatient facility, but we need one. And he made an agreement with me that's between him and I. And I will tell you, the Joint Commission visit came after my first year. The Joint Commission surveyors were extremely shocked with what we had done with HLDS. The next day, I got approval to build the outpatient. And so from a people standpoint, that was a tremendous, Hank. So I have a dedicated team now that supports our outpatient facility. They all are the same people. Our clinics have relationships with them. They talk to them every day. They never had that before because it's like their instruments just went into a black hole of CPD, and they hope they got them back in a timely manner. So from a people aspect, putting the right processes in the right places, training people, having the right structure from a supervisory standpoint. We had a lot of people rolling up to one person. It was insurmountable. We couldn't have employee engagement in that level. So all of that, I mean, there's no easy answer to this. I think all of that goes to your people strategy. The other thing in supply chain, and we have different strategies and pillars. We have a people strategy that stands by itself. And we really focus on our people. How do we make our people better? How do we develop them? And then the individuals that are just content, how do we just make their jobs what they want it to be when they come in and not make it any harder than it is? So it's a loaded question in some ways because there's a lot that goes into it, and people are the most important asset, quote unquote. So I think we've done a really tremendous job of trying to do that, and we're not perfect at it. It's a continuous journey.
I mean, you brought up an important point about I'm going to use this metaphor. You didn't say it this way, you know, but making sure that you're only letting the right people get on the bus. And once they're on the bus, you're making sure that they're in the right seat in their specialty, their skill set, you know, like where they want to be. Just like you said, like, is this the job that you want to be doing truly? And if not, well, let's find you another seat on the bus. And if it comes to it, and if everybody kind of realizes, hey, like this job, this industry, maybe just this department is not for you, you're not thriving here, and at the next, you know, bus stop, we're going to let you get off the bus, and we're going to let you go to where you want to go, and we're going to keep on our journey toward excellence. And I think that's a practical takeaway in the audience, you know, that's listening in today, that that interview process, we're not all lucky enough to have a waiting list like CHOP does, you know, for folks who want to work there. But don't compromise in that interview process to just throw like a warm body at the problem just because you are short staffed. I think it's really critical, like what you said, to connect. Like, who are you looking for? What is the mission and that skill set and that culture? And only let those types of folks in, because it becomes really challenging, really heartbreaking, you know, to put the wrong person in this team. And then you've got all kinds of, you know, relational challenges, you got process challenges that come with just having the wrong fit on the team.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, and just to expand a second is if you do have union employees, your relationship with the delegates and your union leadership is crucial to your people's success and to the kind of environment in your department. And I'm very fortunate, you know, I have a really good partnership with our union leaders all the way to the top. I was involved in the recent negotiations for our new contract. You know, we're not a department that has a lot of grievances, a lot of issues because of the way that we, in my opinion, treat our employees. And so having that relationship with the union, because they can also help you with certain things. You know, a lot of challenges your employees have are sometimes out of management's control. Like, you can't really, they haven't done anything to do for you to actually react. You can coach as much as you want, but use a union as an advocate for you. And if you have that relationship, they will partner with you.
That's a great call out. You know, I might have you back for another podcast just on the topic of unions, because we've got a lot of questions, and it's always interesting because we talk about different things, and the union context and applying a lot of the philosophies around like training and discipline and career ladders and everything else is just a different environment. And so I want to kind of sidetrack that, you know, but we'll have you back for round 2 on that topic. That's a good call out. At the end of your last answer, though, that you kind of alluded to supply chain and the people mission around supply chain, but I really want to kind of dive into that piece right now, because a big theme of your award-winning season is this integration and kind of reporting structure around supply chain. So let's spend a good chunk of time right now. Why the emphasis? I know that was your background, but, you know, like, what was kind of the philosophy and strategy for saying, hey, this needs to happen in this way to get to this goal that we're looking toward, which is building the best in-class sterile processing department? How do you see that model and that focus as a part of your success at CHOP?
So it's interesting. So supply chain and sterile processing or sterile processing reported under supply chain right before I got to CHOP. And so I wasn't a part of the decision. But what I can say, and I don't want to emphasize too much the success was because of this relationship, but what I can say is this relationship, when I say that, so I report up to the vice president of supply chain. Excuse me. So sterile processing is a part of supply chain. Excuse me. It's National Supply Chain Week, so shout out to all you supply chain individuals. And next week we have Central Sterile. We get the party for 2 weeks in a row. But here was the key, I think, for CHOP. So sterile processing at the time reported up to the director of perioperative nursing. At one point in time, it reported to respiratory years ago because of scopes and HLD, et cetera. So it never really had this home. Supply chain, prior to my boss joining, had its own challenges, and they've really turned it around. And I almost think it was like sterile processing isn't successful in its current model. Which department has the best infrastructure, has the best processes to make sterile processing successful and for sterile processing to have a true advocate? One of the things that, and I don't know if others experience this, is what I've noticed is when it reports up to periop, the director of periop has a really tough job because they have a nurse in their mind, in their head telling them one thing, and they have a CPD director telling them something else, and then they have to figure out who do they agree with. If they agree with the CPD director, that nurse isn't going to be happy. And if they agree with the nurse, the CPD director is not going to be happy. So I actually think breaking it out makes sense. Now, where supply chain comes in, and this is from my background, technology is number one. There are technologies that we use in supply chain and ideas around it that the clinical areas just don't have. Clinical areas are focused on the patient. We're focused on getting the right thing to the patient, right? Whether it's a supply, an instrument, a piece of equipment, that's a totally different mindset. So when you start thinking like that and put technologies to surround that, your ability to support patient care is very different. That's one. The other thing is standardization. Supply chain's MO is standardization. If you can't standardize something and you work in supply chain, you're probably not going to work in supply chain that long. So one of the things by putting it under supply chain is we didn't have visibility into everything. So we could standardize our products. We could standardize our tools, the way SPM was being used across the system. We could start putting everyone on the same playing field. So when we ran our data and analytics, it was clean. It wasn't like, wow, we have to do something for this site, but now it's different for this site. Now it's all one. The Epic, and I saw Susan, who I replied to in our message, the Epic piece is key too. Supply chain has a lot of knowledge in Epic. One of the few support services in my mind that's non-clinical that really understands Epic, because we use it to show surgeon scorecards around supply utilization. Why are you using 15 things for the surgery and this surgeon uses 3? So we already had that knowledge. And then I go back to the advocacy. So our vice president, Joni Rittler, is an unwavering advocate for our department. No, she knows that we're not perfect, but she's a voice at the table just for sterile processing and supply chain. And our successes, especially during the pandemic, and what we've been able to do, I think it's more around the structure, Hank. It's the supply chain structure. It's very tight processes. There's a lot of years of knowledge around standardization technology. When you wrap all that in and you think about sterile processing is a form of logistics. I know we probably don't like to say that, and that might wrinkle some feathers a little bit, but go with me on the journey for a second. Whether I'm getting a custom surgical pack that's disposal up to the OR, or I'm getting an ortho tray up to the OR, I still have to get something up to the OR. And there's still a way to do it that is efficient. There's a way to do it that's not efficient. When you start embedding some of the supply chain and lean methodologies into your work in CPD, the previous speaker, Lori, was talking about, how they organizing their shelves and getting things at the right location. That's supply chain stuff 101, right? We've done that for years. How do we start doing things in CPD that doesn't, you don't lose the sterile processing feel of everything. We're not trying to turn you into supply chain, but how do you embed some of the supply chain principles? And that's what we've done. And it's worked really, really well. We utilize a system for point of use technologies at CHOP called Par Excellence, which is our weighted based system we use on the patient floors. Well, I actually installed that in CPD. I was familiar with it. So one of the items I would tell you is we always had a hard time replenishing peel packs from the OR. We had a big peel pack wall. It was very manual. And so we put it on a weighted bin system. And what we did is we built a Par-X wall in CPD, and we built identical carts in the OR that actually mirror the exact wall. So when a technician pulls off the cart, he's pulling it in the form. So he just goes up there and it's bang, bang, bang. And now the ordering is done by a handheld. It generates an order. And so it's all in a system. We can see data on it. I can see how much usage is going on. We never had any of that. And we would not have had that if we didn't embed supply chain into the process.
I love that specific concrete example of that, I'm telling you, the pill pack challenge is everybody's challenge.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you've developed not only a solution kind of on the product side of things, but to your point, there's also a process that's built around it that is scalable and standardized. And, like you kind of mentioned it before, and I kind of want to go into this piece as we move into the process part of this award. I want to talk about the journey of improvement, that was referenced in the article write-up in HPN. And I just want to ask you, like, how do you manage the vision, right? So, like, you're speaking from this director level, a lot of vision casting is involved in that director chair. In casting a vision, in moving toward improvement, you got to admit, just like Alcoholics Anonymous, you got to admit that you have a problem first before you can start improving. But what does this look like on the day-to-day, and all the challenges that kind of confront people that can take them off course in this journey? Was it hard to get folks to see that, something like this national award in excellence was actually possible, considering everything that you came from as you described here at the beginning?
So I think it was difficult for a lot of people, but it wasn't difficult for me because when I came to CHOP and just in my first year meeting people, not even a year, first couple months, I could see where we were going to go with me as a leader because I saw what we were capable of pretty quickly with our people. Where we have some really cool things at CHOP, we actually have an entire office of process and performance improvement. And I have a really good relationship. Well, she's a former leader now. She's the AVP of our community hospital. I had a really good relationship with her. She was one of the first kind of colleagues at CHOP that took me under her wing, introduced me to people. And I admitted, I said, listen, Cheryl, we have a problem. And it's not our problem alone, but I'm tasked with fixing it and I need help. And she really partnered with me. I could not have done this by myself. So she had her team spend several months with my team, with me, with the OR, with all of our end users, and document a lot of things, Hank. And eventually it came out like CPD is not the problem, guys. Everything else is the problem. Like CPD has their own stuff, but what we're doing to CPD is the problem. Having her be the partner for me when I presented that to the COO and to our chief medical officer was very important. It wasn't important. It was important for two reasons. One, because I was a new leader, right? And I'm the guy coming in saying, it's not my department. I need all these resources to solve these crazies.
Right.
It's not. You can't do that, right? But having her come in, unbiased views, they don't even know what sterile processing is, and say, listen, Robert's got these things to work on, but this is the issue. This is how we're going to solve it. We did a presentation with our leadership team, and we literally got a round of applause for the presentation. It was because of the collaborative work we did, because I couldn't have gone in there by myself. So that was one piece of it. And how do you manage it? You have to chunk it. CHOP has been around for 1800s, right? You're not going to, it's going to be great when I leave and CHOP's going to be great whether I'm here or not. You're not going to fix everything in one day. You have to be realistic about that. We had a very, very aggressive plan, but our number one item was reducing regulatory vulnerabilities in all of our offsites. How do we consolidate all of these one-off places doing sterile processing? And that was it. That was their number one vulnerability. And we said, we're going to spend the next year focusing on that. But simultaneously, you have to do things concurrently to that. So that's when we started stepping up our education program. That was a separate team. Again, creating the separate team to handle kind of that major legwork that a lot of educators, I know you do every day, and educators get pulled into so much besides education. It's fascinating to me. But we carved that out because you have to allow your operations team to do the operational things. So it was that. It was presenting a vision, getting buy-in from leadership and resources to kind of take our strategy to the next level, and then we ran with it. And we did. We had a very aggressive year-long plan with a lot of projects that were going on simultaneously. But the one thing that we always did is if we felt like we were going too fast, or we felt like we were making split decisions or taking risks that we shouldn't do, we paused. And everyone felt comfortable to pause. And we've done that. We do that today. we actually just built a brand new centralized scope reprocessing center. So we're taking over all scope reprocessing for the entire enterprise. And we went live, and immediately we were like, wow, all this planning we did for 2 years and something doesn't feel right, we're going to pause. And we told the GI suite, we're going to pause, we're going to do the processing up in your suite for right now until we figure this out. And it took a few days, and now we're humming along. And you can't be afraid to do that. It doesn't show defeat. It doesn't show not successful. It shows that you're human, but you'd rather get it right than continue to do something that doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Great feedback, because there's that temptation that you have put in so much work, you've made the announcements, to pull back or to pause. It's kind of like an affront to your pride, maybe, as a leader, but that's not worth protecting if the process is not going to be safe at the end, for the patient, or if it's not going to be a smooth process for your customer. So really appreciate that insight. We've talked a lot about people. We've gone into the processes, and I want to kind of transition here to products. And you've mentioned a number of solutions already that have helped to move this vision along. And I like to say, and I've said a couple times in these sessions already, like, we need good products and solutions and technologies in sterile processing in order to do what needs to be done. Just imagine a department that had no products. It'd be a pretty empty place. Without naming names, can you speak to the role that any other kind of products or solutions or services has played in you to build this this best-in-class team there at CHOP?
Hank, it's an interesting question, because yes, we need good products. We need good equipment, great equipment, not good equipment. We need great equipment. I think where it plays a role in the employee success is, and I think of decontamination in some of our processes is immediately what jumps up in mind is, I'm going to give you one. We've installed, and even in our new design, we have boroscopes in all of our areas. And that seems like this far-fetched idea. No, these have been around forever. They're expensive, they break, but that's an immediate product that has had a tremendous benefit. Suctions, for example, and again, we're a children's hospital, so we have some of the smallest diameter, smallest lumens you can imagine. It's nearly impossible for a technician to clean that perfectly if you don't give them the right tools, the right products to do that. We do look at our solutions. We have so many vendor relationships. The one thing that I will hit on that in some ways could be a little bit of a negative with the supply chain piece is supply chain tends to look at costs, right? We try to be product agnostic until someone tells us we can't. Well, listen, when they converted us to some items that were a lower cost, and I can tell you we don't use those items anymore. And that's where I come in, blending both of those lanes. Is I'm not afraid to try something, but the second it compromises the integrity of our work or quality, I'm not using it anymore. And so it is a trial and error. We have great relationships with our vendors. We have vendors that they promote their products just like any other vendor, and we go through them. We are very tight on what we bring in. We like to use what we have. We keep it standard across the system. So one of the challenges at CHOP, for instance, our pre-cleaning solution, that was a big one we did. The previous gel, the previous spray that we used, the enzymatic, was clear. It was jelly. It didn't really cover the instruments. So we did a massive pilot, and we converted to a blue colored spray. Lasts for a while. It's really good. The clinicians loved it. We got tons of buy-in. But now I have to standardize that across all of our surgery centers and our 2 hospitals. So we don't make product changes that quickly. We do vet them. We have a lot of committees they go through. I sit on medical device and other ones. So we are picky about our products, but I also trust our vendors. We have relationships with vendors for a while. So, we use certain sterilization equipment and washer disinfectors. I'm going to trust the vendors based on their research and what they show me to tell me what are the best products to use. And then if it's subpar, we'll look differently. I think right now our products is something that we have thought about. And with the opening of our new facility, we have changed kind of not only the delivery, but also some of the brands of the products to go back to some of the higher quality ones, I would say. But I think products are an evolution, because I feel like every day I get an email from a vendor or another vendor that has a new product, and you just have to kind of vet it. It's product conversions can kind of bog you down if you're not careful with it. And I don't really want us to spend a lot of time on new trials and new product conversions or testing things if what we have isn't broken, but if there's a reason to do it, we do it.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to a podcast interview that we did with Sarah Vinson a couple seasons ago, and we talked about chemical conversions, right? Like just one aspect of what you're describing, but it's no easy feat to
Right.
convert something just like chemicals. So yeah, like when you're talking about um, the pre-treatment and all these other facilities, like there's a lot that goes into even identifying the cost because the bottles are not all the same size. How much chemical you're using is not always the same, and there's a lot of deep digging that goes into doing those conversions well.
Right.
And that's not even discussing the end user education, the end user buy-in. Like all of those things have to be a part of that puzzle. So that's a great point. Um, this hour has flown by. We got a couple minutes left, so I want to wrap with a couple of important kind of takeaways here. And before I get into that, I want to say I admire your confidence as a leader because I asked you kind of earlier, about the vision casting and such. And I like leaders, kind of look at a problem and say, yeah, like, I think we can build something great here. Why not? Like, let's do this. We got the team, we got the support. Come on. I'm curious on this award. Um, there is some intention behind it, right? Like, you can't just kind of wake up in December and be like, you know what? I think I want to apply for this award, next month. Let's just see if you win it. Like, you really got to be thinking a little bit ahead of time and saying, hey, like, we're on a trajectory here that's pretty awesome and unique. Let's start planning toward this. So, like, what was that intentionality to your piece, and did you engage anyone else on your team in kind of that 2018 run up to 2019? In starting to track all this momentum and all the projects that are going in so that you were prepared for that application process?
So yes, it is. It was a lot that went into it. When I look back, it's kind of interesting when I decided for us to put our name in. I had a lot of help with the report, and it was interesting. I was meeting with my leader, and I was meeting, and I can't remember if it was in the year, whatever it was, and I was just going through highlights of what we did the last 12 months. And both of us kind of paused and I said, oh my gosh, like, look what we did. Look where we've come. And then all of a sudden we started remembering, like, the remarks were getting, I was presenting at leadership briefings, and like the whole mindset of CPD changed, and you could feel it in the organization. You could feel it. And it was time to submit. And I said, we have a story to tell. We have a really good chance, not only of winning this award, but just let's put the story on paper. We hadn't done that, taking the time to do that. And another thing, I'm not great at it. It's time consuming. But taking a second and just writing down your accomplishments, you'll be amazed at what your team has done. And then for me, it was, I need my team to see how good they are. And what better way to do that than to get this award? I wasn't so familiar. I'm familiar with HPN, obviously, from the supply chain side. I wasn't so familiar with this award and writing it up. But I can tell you what this did for our employees and for my leadership team. It just revalidated everything we were telling them. Like, I get how it feels. I get that you feel beat up, but you have to understand how great you are and what you're doing. And putting this together, us getting the award, it was almost like, I don't want to say a sense of relief, but it was like they needed it, right? They really needed that push. And it really transcended us because people at the organization learned about it, right? It was communicated. And all of a sudden, this CPD being the challenging area because of the processes was like, wow, what more can we give to CPD? So what this award ended up doing is giving us more work for sure, but it just reiterated the excellence we knew we had, what we were doing, but it also showed it off to others. And the other thing I will say, my last piece is, and I did this with the other award winners, is it allows people to learn what we're doing and take a few nuggets, right? I don't expect someone to be like, oh, CHOP's the best. We're going to take Robert's report and we're going to become CHOP. I don't want you to become CHOP. I want you to be the best version of you. And if there's nuggets in my thing that help you, great, because there was nuggets in yours that helped me develop our processes. So that's one of the things I would say.
I'll tell you, Robert, to know I warned you before we started that we're not going to get to everything that I want to talk about today. And that is true, but you really laid down a terrific story, great insights around accountability on the supply chain piece, like we talked about a lot. And then, even wrapping up here to the impact that the award has had on the facility. That's always something that I'm really curious about. Like how has it changed the perspective at the local level on who is that team in sterile processing? What are they capable of? Like you said, and we're like, hey, let's give them more because they're quite capable. Let's keep
Right.
on improving that process, trusting the team, right? I think that's the theme that it really comes back around to. So I want to congratulate you again on a job well done and your team there. So please share that with your team. And yeah, just thank you for sharing an hour of your time today at the Conference of Champions.
Yeah, absolutely, Hank. Thank you. And thanks for everyone who joined.
All right, we're going to turn it back over to Brett.
All right. Thanks, guys. Great job. That was another, excuse me, really engaging discussion. And, Robert, I really love the message about being clear on the overall message of accountability and making sure that when you have a team in front of you, you just have to make sure that you're lining out what they're accountable for and also investing in the people. Great message. And also wanted to extend my congratulations to Robert and his team at CHOP. So once again, congrats, great job. Continue the great work. We appreciate everything that you're doing. And we certainly hoped that everybody here with us today took some things out of that to help improve your departments or turn the corner or just capitalize on some great processes that you're already doing right now. We're going to take another short break, about 15 minutes, and another quick, if you do need to or want to contact Robert, you can certainly access his contact information on the screen. You can reach out to him via LinkedIn. But once again, we're going to take another quick break. So grab a snack, grab some lunch, and we're going to be back for the next session here very shortly. Thanks, everybody.